Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, your gateway to the trends and tropes of the horror genre. This is episode 90, and we are celebrating Black History Month, February 2020. And I am your host, Eric Lee, and as usual, I am joined by
Mike Campbell
from New Orleans.
Not from New Orleans,
Liz
from
Williams.
Portland.
Oh.
Liz is from New Orleans.
I'm from New Orleans.
Mike talking over the over the through line here, and for the second episode in a row, we have a special guest,
Gwen Callahan.
Yeah, our
from Portland.
From Portland.
Also from Portland. Yes,
From Portland.
And the context being important
But
because
formerly of New Orleans.
Yes.
yeah. Oh, there,
Yeah.
beautiful tie-in. And Gwen, of course, is the director of the Portland Horror Film Festival and the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival. And Gwen, when is the Portland Horror Film Festival going to launch this year?
The Portland Horror Film Festival is going to be June 10th to the 13th this year at the beautiful historic Hollywood Theater. And you can look for news, information, ticket updates, film updates, guest updates at portlandhorror.com.
Yeah, and we get a lot of short filmmakers who contact us doing a, hey, would you take a look at our film? I would highly recommend to all of you directors, short film directors who listen to us and follow us on our website to submit to both of these film festivals, as they curate some of the very best horror shorts around.
The best films.
Yeah.
The best films you will see in 2020.
Yeah.
Will come out of the short selection from the Portland Horror Film Festival.
Yep.
Guaranteed.
So that's totally plug worthy. So
Yep.
That was my plug.
yes. And actually, you've got something else
And
that
actually, I
you've
have
got
some other
brewing.
news. So being a guest on all these podcasts has made me realize that I have more things to say about films than I thought I did. So my friend Gretchen Martin and I are launching a podcast called Gwen and Gretchen Watch Movies. And the first episode will be out later this month. We have a Facebook group
Yay.
set up. I think it's just Gwen and Gretchen Watch Movies, and also on Instagram under the same name. And we're just going to be watching horror movies. I mean, the tagline is horror nerds watch movies and talk about them. What makes that different?
crazy
I
idea.
know. What
That-
makes that different from every other
What
podcast?
could possibly make that
Well,
work?
Eric and I are not nerds, so I think that's where we have to draw the line. That's the
Mike?
difference.
I have to break it to you.
The Boba Fett blaster in the room probably speaks to other things.
Oh, no. It's true.
I've got a dice tower right
my
there.
God.
Eric has 2 display cases in his living room.
that are
Or
packed to the
three
bring with
displays.
lightsabers.
that belie the fact that I am a 7-layer nerd dip.
All right. This self-realization is not going well.
So we are totally appropriating Black History Month here. This is an appreciation for non-Black individuals.
True.
Who
Yeah.
has, at the same time, have a deep appreciation of the contributions of not just Afro-Americans, but around the world. An opportunity to pick out some of our favorite characters from the long track record. if you actually
Incredibly long track record. I didn't realize or appreciate how long the track record was until I jumped into horror noir, the Shudder original that came out last year in 2019, which also showed at the Overlook Film Festival last year. Mm-hmm. I mean, I sort of like my horror knowledge of the African American contribution to horror. I thought it jumped off at 1992 with Candyman. And, anything prior to that, I was not super aware of or super well versed in, primarily because there was so much exploitation, and there was there was so much stigma attached to a lot of the directors and the characters and the writing and the directing of those African American characters, I just didn't have that appreciation whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think that one of the key things that everybody listening to us should probably do is to put things into context. Go watch horror noir.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely,
and,
for sure.
and that will put everything that we say into context.
Right. Yeah, I think it'll certainly be a nice little supplement to this podcast. Or the podcast will be a supplement to horror noir. Either way you want to look at it, it's totally fine with us.
Right. And, there aren't a whole lot of horror movies that are explicitly about the sort of the black experience.
Very, very few.
But there are, there are some famous tropes, and actually horror noir goes into this, which is the black guy always gets it first.
Right.
Which Roger Ebert helped popularize that idea. And that now has taken on sort of a second and third life through things like Deep Blue Sea,
right?
And where it's like, oh, I'm gonna get it because the very meta. I'm a black guy in a situation where there's a killing by numbers, and I'm gonna get it first. Also, famously in Scream.
Yep. Yeah, I mean it's become so ubiquitous that it's just as important to the horror genre as is The Final Girl. I mean it's roughly it holds the exact same sort of cachet as the Final Girl concept. Whereas with The Final Girl, it's sort of this film trope wrapped up in feminist thought, whereas the black guy always gets it first is sort of wrapped up in this kind of racial identity question. But yeah, equally as important, and just as significant. Since we just got done talking about female horror directors, I thought it was an interesting. It is an interesting juxtaposition between those two things,
right? And that they both celebrate their months of in February.
Yes.
So I'll go ahead and lead off with I think the first black character who I really identified with and really loved, and it's also one of my first loves in horror, and that's Yaphet Kotto in Alien.
Oh, right.
This is Parker.
I thought you were going to say Ernie Hudson in Ghostbusters.
No.
Okay.
But I do, Winston Zeddemore didn't have. I always thought that sidebar, Winston didn't get enough to do.
That's true.
But also Ernie Hudson, not as funny as Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, or Harold Ramis. So there's that. If they had Eddie Murphy, and that would have been wow. But that didn't happen.
He was originally Eddie.
He was supposed to be.
Eddie Murphy was slated to be in Ghostbusters, but he was too damn busy with so much other stuff.
Oh man, could you imagine? That would have been cool.
Yeah.
But Yaphet Kotto, Kananga from Live and Let Die, I think, was it, or one of those Bond movies?
Yep. It was to Live and Let Die. Yep.
He's just one of the working guys on the ship, and I think it was a testament actually to the casting of Alien that when I watched it as a kid, it didn't jump out as he's the black guy, but he was an integral member of the crew, and everything about the behavior of the crew felt natural. Right? It felt like real people. And they didn't, there were none of these sort of referential moments of identifying as being the black guy.
Right. Yeah, I mean, much in the same way that Ripley didn't identify, like you didn't identify her as like, oh, she's a woman, she's a powerful woman. You didn't say, oh, this is a black guy. It was just a member of the crew. And everybody was more or less on equal footing, it seemed to be.
And I think for me, the thing I liked about Parker was he was the guy who seemed to get it. And Ripley did too, to a certain degree, but Ripley also came at it from a little bit more of a paranoid kind of a, and the rest of the crew probably would have benefited if they had actually listened to Ripley. But Parker seemed to understand what they were up against, and that he was actually he was the one guy who actually tried to smack an alien with the, what was it, a fire extinguisher or something, and he was the protector. And granted, he and Lambert aided in that famous sequence. But I remember that, and I remember just being distraught when actually with all the characters getting killed. But I always remembered Parker in Alien, and he was a big, imposing guy with a smirk and a smile, and it's a tough call because my other characters that I'm picking are going to be a little, or character, we're only doing two. My backup for this one would have been, or the equivalent would have been Childs from The Thing, who played sort of a similar role, the big tough guy, and and they would always have these great lines. I think for Childs it was like, that makes you a murderer, that kind of thing, or the all the stuff, his play with Kurt Russell. But I'm cheating by dragging a second character in there. But I think
one. But it just happened.
But it's my podcast. I'm going to do what I want. So love both. Those I think they're representative of ensemble cast members who are memorable, who are just these they become bigger than life characters, and I love that about them. So that's my second pick.
But that is kind of a trope, right? Like a lot of ensemble cast, like the black person tends to be the one that kind of cuts through all the bullshit and drama and noise with the, like, we're gonna die, we need to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
That thing was huge.
Yeah.
Kill Brett. It was like I thought.
Or to quote Ice Cube from Anaconda, there's snakes in there that big?
Yes. So that is so. Yeah,
that is just summarized all of Anaconda in one sentence.
In one sentence.
And I guess that's sort of the in both of the characters that I just cited, they do not fall to the traditional trope of the black guy gets it first.
Right.
Parker is late, and for all we know, Childs is still alive.
Right.
I'm holding out to that hope. So I'm going to pass this off to Liz.
Okay. I'm going to do this is when you're driving up to the gateway of horror. Right before you drive through the gate, you're going to find this new series that's on Netflix. It is family friendly. So anybody who's listening who has kids that I would say as young as like 7 or 8 would love this. It is a predominantly black cast, and it is Raising Dion. This is based on a comic book by Dennis Liu, and it is starring Josiah Young as Dion, Alicia Wainwright as his mother, and Michael B. Jordan, who is also the producer of this, as his father. And the summary is: a single mother must hide her son's superpowers to protect him from exploitation while investigating their origin and her husband's death. So this is what if I was raising a superhero from the point of view of this single mother. Her husband has recently passed away under mysterious circumstances, and he kind of comes back to Dion, and Dion is discovering that he has telekinesis and can make things move with his mind. Jason Ritter is one of the only white cast members in it. He plays his godfather because he was best friends with the dad when he passed away. And it is utterly charming, but it has some horror elements because when they're out in like lightning storms and rain, they see all these kind of ghostly figures. So we're thinking that Dion's powers are linked to an aurora event that happened in the sky, because his dad he was a storm chaser who died in New Orleans during a storm. So it's really cool. I'm not finished with the series yet, but prepare to have your heart stolen by Josiah Young, who plays Dion. He's 7 years old. He is really carrying this cast, and he's totally believable as a kid who is just like, wait, this is cool. This is how I get in with the cool kids. And his mom is like, nope, you can't use your powers outside of the house. We're just trying to figure them out. So she's going through raising him by herself and then having this extra layer. They also do a really good job of bringing in his teacher. His science teacher is a young Black guy, so you don't see that a lot in the classroom. And then also having science be where all the kids are focusing. And he has a classmate named Esperanza who has brittle bone disease. So she is in a wheelchair, who is just in love with Dion, and she's super into science. So you have just a lot of things that are really great for kids set in this supernatural and not horror where they're going to be scared, but it's pulling them up to the gateway of saying this might be something I'm interested in watching later. And it's really great, really charming. It's on Netflix, and it just got renewed for a season 2.
Oh, cool.
So that is Raising Dion.
So genre adjacent sort of.
Yes. Yep. Pulling up on your way to the gateway. Great for kids though. If any listeners have kids that are young, like Hank would love it. He might be a little old.
We're doing it. Yeah, no, I think he's the target age for sure. We're doing it. It's happening.
Great.
There you go.
Another great Liz Williams recommendation that we will follow through on.
Yeah, it's our television expert.
Yep.
Mike.
All right. I am gonna one of my favorite actors, who is, I kind of think he's like the John Cazale of African American actors. Like, he was not in a lot of stuff, but the stuff he was in, holy moly!
What do we got?
Like, John Cazale was in what? Deer Hunter, Godfather 2.
Everything he had was nominated for an Oscar. Every movie he was in.
Dog Day Afternoon. It's like, yep, I'm done, and I'm dying, and that's it. It's over. The actor I'm talking about is, and much like Eric, I'm doing kind of a twofer here. This is Duane Jones.
Yeah, I thought so.
Duane Jones, of course, was in Night of the Living Dead, but he was also in a 1973 experimental horror film directed by Bill Gunn, that he was in with Marlene Clark. This is Ganja and Hess.
Yeah.
Of course, Spike Lee then went on to remake this, which I guess was not just a remake, but it was like it was a little bit more than a remake, because he brought back some of the same exact same actors and writers, and they were all involved with the production of the people that were still around that were involved with the 1973 production were also involved with Spike Lee's 2014 version, which was The Sweet Blood of Jesus. Of course, Ganja and Hess follows the exploits of Duane Jones, an anthropologist who becomes a vampire after his assistant stabs him with this dagger that is cursed, and he then falls in love with a young woman, Ganja, who is played by Marlene Clark, who learns of his secret. Duane Jones, obviously, I mean, he did do a couple other films, but he ended up dying in 1988. Right. So he wasn't around. I mean, he was really only kicking around in the sort of the film world for, the better part of about 10 years or so. He was, I can't remember where he was. He was working at State University of New York as the artistic director for the Center for Culture and Art in Manhattan. So he had kind of for the McGuire Theater, he had kind of hung up his acting career, and he sort of moved into working for this arts and culture center. But I guess the thing is, it is pretty amazing to me, and to think that you can just do two films like that, like Ganja and Hess, and then do Night of the Living Dead. Now, I mean, much like probably Raising Dion is horror adjacent, Ganja and Hess is probably horror adjacent, because kind of in the same way that George Romero's Martin, there's the tie back, deals with vampirism. It's really subtle and very, very vague about whether it's really some sort of like it's sort of latent response to oppressive Christianity. It's a function of the African American condition, or what it is. But the vampirism definitely comes forward in Ganja and Hess. Although, still at the end of the day, you don't necessarily know if he is a vampire in the traditional Christopher Lee sexy vampire trope.
Well, Duane Jones, I think, occupies. He is the touchstone black actor in horror cinema.
Right.
I don't think there's any. You watch horror noir, he's revered. Two films. I mean, it's like James Dean, right? Didn't do a whole lot, but what he did was super important.
Right. That's why I say, he's the John Cazale of black cinema.
And at a time where, black actors were not given the lead in particularly in genre stuff, and he also famously weren't casting for a black actor. He just happened to be the best actor in Pittsburgh. Who went after the job, and then was it the shooting of Malcolm X that happened right when they released Night of the Living Dead?
I believe yes, yeah.
And I think Romero was bracing for, what does this mean? He goes, I didn't intend for it to be this way, but it actually ended up being this seminal moment in black movie history, horror or not.
Right. Well, and Romero obviously used like the whole concept of the zombie as this sort of like dehumanizing quality, where it's this sort of other thing that you can put all your fears and hatred and loathing onto. And so it was interesting that you would use an African American actor to juxtapose against that dehumanization.
Right. And the really hammered home with sort of the shooting where the hillbillies out there just picking off zombies out there, and then eventually taking out Duane Jones at the end.
Right.
Spoiler alert. Right. For a 50-year-old movie.
52-year-old movie.
Oh my God. So it's a, at the height of the racial change in this country, packed a 1, 2, 3 punch.
Yep. So, and Ganja and Hess too. I do recommend, if for folks that have not seen Ganja and Hess, I think it is a lot better than The Sweet Blood of Jesus, and I'm not sure exactly why Spike Lee. I didn't read up a lot or listen to any interviews where he's talking about the remake, but I'm not exactly sure why he remade it, other than it was this pretty amazing film in 1973, directed by an African American, starring all African Americans in it. I don't know that it needed to be remade, and I don't think he really brought anything new or unique to it. But he did, and that's certainly his prerogative. Sure. But I do recommend folks go watch the original version. 73, Ganja and Hess. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very psychedelic. I'll just call it that.
Yeah, it's a film of its age.
It is of its age, yes. Parked firmly in 1973, doobies and all.
Gwen.
I think it's on Shudder too, huh?
It is on Shudder, yep.
For streaming.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm coming a little into the future from Mike, but
yes.
This was a 2011 film. It was written and directed by Joe Cornish. It was his first feature film. It was also John Boyega's first leading role in part in a film as Moses in Attack the Block.
Heck yes.
So this film is about a bunch of kids who basically live in what's called an estate council. I think we would call that like the projects in America. And they're in South London, and they mug a woman on her way home from work, and something falls out of the sky, scratches one of the kids in the face, and they realize like, oh, this thing is a creature and it's alive, and so they hunt it down and kill it, and then more start falling from the sky. And so they're all ready to like, let's get these things. And they basically, the woman runs away. And then in the process of trying to find more of these things that have fallen from the sky, the cops show up and arrest Moses, who is played by John Boyega. And, they get dispatched by the these creatures that have fallen from the sky. And nobody will believe them that they're aliens because they're a bunch of dumb kids. But once the woman who Jodie Whittaker plays Sam, who is this nurse that on her way home from work is held up by these kids for whatever. They're bored. They're having. Trying to find something to do, and they're really poor or whatever. And I guess Joe Cornish came up with the idea for this script after he was mugged in real life on his way home, and he noticed that the 5 young people that were mugging him seemed to be just as scared as he was. And so he kind of started researching what their lives were like, and then wrote this story from that experience. And so the kids really kind of come with their own rich backgrounds, and they become more than just some like young punks that are holding people up. And you realize that there's this whole culture and ecosystem that exists in their world that we don't often get to see because most of us aren't hanging around the projects very much.
Right.
So most of these kids were unknown. They came from those areas like the estate councils, and had to go, like they were in drama classes. They were recruited from like online ads. John Boyega found out about the film from an ad online, and they went through multiple auditions for their roles. And this was one that was kind of a sneak attack.
Right.
I kind of remember seeing like maybe 1 or 2 trailers like after it had come out, but. Back then I think we went to see it in the theater because we were like, let's go see a movie. I don't know what was playing. And I think maybe the thing that we were trying to see was sold out. So we ended up going to see this and being very surprised at how good it was.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
The performances were really excellent. The story was really fun. And, it's kind of horror light. It's more sci-fi horror, but, it's an interesting glimpse into, the lives of marginalized people in more ways than one, because they're people of color, they're poor, and they're kids. And so that's like the 3 strikes against them.
It's the marginalization trifecta.
Yeah.
Afro-Brit kids. This was actually, I think, also ended up on Liz. Did you have this on best of the decade?
Yes, I did indeed. I love this movie.
I'm surprised.
Good fun.
I'm surprised that those money grubbers in Hollywood haven't got their paws on Attack the Block 2.
I would watch it.
I would too, but I'm kind of surprised.
They just tried to make what was it, Skyline?
Oh yeah, right.
What was there?
Yeah.
There was 2 that came out right around the same time, and I always get them mixed up.
Yeah.
And one of them I really liked, and one of them was terrible.
Right.
There was Attack on L.A. was another one, which was felt. It was a kind of a cheesy war of the worlds kind of a thing,
right?
Where they went block by block, but it was a lot of. It felt like someone was just taking Call of Duty and making it into into a movie, and it was just. So no, Attack the Block had so much heart, and the kids were so fun.
Yep.
I loved, and I loved the monsters. The monsters were fun. They were really original looking. Never seen anything like them. They would open their mouth and they have these bright glowing green mouths. Fun stuff. Yeah.
Subtitles are good with that one, though.
Yeah.
Or captions.
Those are some thick Cockney accents they have.
So. Subtitles.
All right, Eric. Who is the other most important person or film in African American film horror history?
I don't know if I'd say all of horror.
Okay.
All
right.
I'm trying to pick between 2 here. I'm going to go with Melanie, who in The Girl with All the Gifts.
Oh, okay.
2017. Sania Nauna.
Interesting choice.
She is she's a sort of hybrid zombie, and it opens up with a post-apocalyptic kind of an Orwellian scene where she and a bunch of other little kids are strapped into wheelchairs and rolled into class, and there's no explanation. There's you get a cold start at this thing, and then one of the little boys starts gnashing his teeth at the teacher, and you realize that then they all start going into a frenzy and start gnashing their teeth, and it's pretty unsettling, and you see these kids struggling around like they're having seizures. but they were all children born of mothers who had been bitten by zombies. And Glenn Close plays the mad Dr. Caldwell, who is running experiments on these kids. And during the middle of an experiment, when Melanie is on the table, the fences come down at the military compound that they're being held at, and the base gets overrun with fast zombies.
Right.
I think the Brits like themselves some fast zombies.
Yep.
Safe
to say.
And they overwhelm the base, and a small group of soldiers, along with Gemma Atherton, who is the teacher Helen, who still holds out hope that these little kids can be, that they are the redemption of and will be the cure for this zombie plague. And there's some sort of, it's sort of like Day of the Triffids-ish thing, where there's something that's releasing spores into the atmosphere, and so there's sort of this MacGuffin of trying to go out there and taking a mission and going out there and trying to shut down these big spore distributors.
Right.
But the heart of the movie is this little girl half monster, and in some ways it reminds me of films like Let the Right One In, where you have this monstrous child who is also actually the center of your focus and the center of your sympathy, because it's not her fault.
Mm-hmm.
She's not evil, but she, if not handled properly, she will, tear a swath through a bunch of troops, right? And so that there are a bunch of the soldiers who don't really trust her, and so she has to earn their trust by, it's like, you can take me out of the restraints, I will be your scout, I can communicate with these things, and you're completely wrapped up into this survival tale and whether she is the chosen one and how she's going to be able to deliver humanity.
This was on your best of 2018? Yeah.
Yeah. You
put this on your top 10 for 2018.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's a movie with a lot of heart, and this is coming at the. I think we can all agree that zombies have played their way to death. Pun intended. This is
It is hard to find zombie films that do something new with the genre.
But this was an interesting take.
Has Sania been in anything else that you can figure?
No,
Are we going to see more of her?
British television, I think, is what she's in, and I don't things that I don't recognize.
Okay,
but she certainly
procedural police dramas.
Yeah, solved it. It was a choice between. And here's Eric again, doubling down.
Getting another one in there.
I had to sneak in, but I know that I've talked about it more recently, and would be Milo from the Transfiguration.
Yeah, right.
Wannabe, very much like Martin.
Yeah.
The boy who thinks that he's a vampire, but he's not.
Right.
He's just going around murdering people and drinking their blood.
Right.
And he's this weirdo little kid in the hood, and everybody in the neighborhood says, that's one fucked up little kid, and he falls in love with Chloe Levine from
The Ranger.
The Ranger.
Yep.
And they're a strange little couple, but they're both independent little films. One dealing, Transfiguration really talks about urban New York City life and a kid who's just messed up.
Right.
Girl with All the Gifts is post-apocalyptic, more sort of conventional zombie stuff with a lot of interesting twists, and both of these kids give a testament to. It's always a trick with young actors, right? And actually, Attack the Block, same thing, taking a big chance, particularly when you're doing these kind of open casting call kind of situations. But I recommend both Girl with All the Gifts and Transfiguration.
All right. Liz, what do you got?
Choices.
What is your other character and or
so
film?
This one is right after you pull through the gateway. We get stuff. This is 1997's Southern Gothic thriller, Eve's Bayou. It is written and directed by Cassie Lemons, who is an African-American woman who you may recognize as Clarice Starling's FBI best friend or Virginia Madsen's research partner from Candyman. But she has written and directed Eve's Bayou. Eve's Bayou stars Samuel L. Jackson, Lynn Whitfield, Jernee Smollett, Megan Good, and Debbie Morgan. And I'm putting it in with horror because the first sentence, it's told from the point of view of a 10-year-old little girl named Eve. And she says, "The summer I killed my father, I was 10 years old." So the summary is, over the course of a long, hot Louisiana summer, Eve Baptiste, played by Jernee Smollett, discovers that her family's affluent existence is merely a facade. The philandering of her suave Dr. Father Lewis, played by Samuel L. Jackson, creates a rift, throwing Eve's mother and teenage sister into emotional turmoil. Eve, though, manages to find some solace with her quirky and psychic aunt, Moselle, who's played by Debbie Morgan. It's set in the 1960s in rural Louisiana. It is absolutely gorgeous. Everybody in it is gorgeous. The costumes are gorgeous. It is super Southern Gothic. So it's just got that like slow molasses, like sultry. You just want to be steeped in the world. Yeah, it's very sultry. I mean, because it's freaking hot in New Orleans. Everybody's always sweating. The soundtrack is fantastic. The soundtrack has like Curtis Mayfield, Etta James, Terrence Blanchard. It has Erykah Badu doing some covers of old 60s songs. It's just a really great movie. It's an all-black cast. And it's a coming-of-age story of a young black girl, which I don't think we see too much. And we definitely don't see them in thrillers. So,
and certainly not
Eve's Bayou.
Certainly not in the context of horror, the horror genre. You don't see coming-of-age films about African-American teens or female teens.
Although, there was one that came out last year that I think it's sort of more of a popcorn film, but I did enjoy Escape Room, which featured a tween African American girl as
I didn't
lead.
See that one.
It's light. Yeah, it's fun.
This one's not light. It's I think Cassie Lemons won the NAACP award. She won the Independent Spirit Award. It was the highest grossing independent film of 1997. It made about $15 million. And it is set in Louisiana on the bayou, so there is a little bit of voodoo, but it's not the main point. And the voodoo, witch doctor is played by Diane Carroll. So, this is a who's who of just amazing talent, not just African-American talent, but amazing talent. It's a wonderful movie. It's one of my favorites. I think it's kind of a hidden little gem, but super gothic, super creepy, and
it may
one
feature
that I think horror fans would like.
One of Samuel L. Jackson's best performances also.
Oh, for sure. He's great in it.
I'm putting this on the Liz Williams recommendation list.
I think you'll definitely like the soundtrack. You're a music guy. The soundtrack's great.
This is a new feature of the podcast, the Liz Williams recommendation list.
Yeah, and I see Gwen taking notes here. It's going to end up on the Gwen and Gretchen Talk movies.
Well, and I just thought it was kind of cool that Cassie Lemons, she's been the sidekick in 2 huge horror movies.
Oh, yeah.
And here she is writing and directing. And she's, this is the closest to horror writing and directing, though, that she's gotten.
Very cool.
Interesting.
Very cool choice.
Yes, thank you.
All right, I'm going to the top of the Black History Month horror actor and or film, and I'm going to choose Ken Faree. Ken Faree, of course, became famous in his role with in Dawn of the Dead. But he was in so many other films. He was in The Wanderers. He was in Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. He was in From Beyond. He was in Night Riders. He was in Devil's Rejects. And a little piece of film history I didn't even know until I started researching for this episode. in Shaun of the Dead, I'm going to see if Eric knew this. In Shaun of the Dead, the place where Shaun works is called Free Electronics.
Oh, wow.
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
And Eric is wearing a Winchester t-shirt.
I know, yeah.
Winchester
I have the
Tavern.
Winchester Tavern t-shirt on today.
Ken Faree is, he was born Kenotis, Kentotis Alvin Faree. Kentotis Alvin
Wow, there's
Faree.
a name for you.
Yeah, look that one up. Kentotis Alvin Faree. Obviously he's been around since the early 1970s. I think one of the first films he was in was Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings. He shortly thereafter did The Wanderers. But yeah, he's been kicking around forever, and he is, by all accounts, just a really, really great person. And in fact, really the only person I have ever tried to seek out an autograph for, the only person in my entire life I have sought out an autograph for, was at Comic-Con in 2010.
Yeah, San Diego
Comic-Con in 2010. Ken Faree was there. I went over to go and meet him. He didn't show up.
Oh, that's right. But I remember you got something there because we went. This was our.
I did. So I went and met.
Only trip down there, yeah.
I met every single woman who was in the Evil Dead films. And I got their I got their autographs, so it was somewhat serendipitous. But yeah, Ken Faree is a really stand-up guy, and he's been kicking around forever, and he still continues to plug along at this. I think he's his now that he's in his early 70s, he's doing slightly less and less work, but he has hung with the horror genre. I mean, obviously Rob Zombie used him in the context of the Devil's Rejects and Halloween. Because that's what Rob Zombie does, is he goes back into the 1980s and 1970s and cherry picks all the grindhouse actors and whatnot.
Yeah,
and
the man knows how to. He's got a sense of cinema history. What he does with it is something else. But yeah, he knows his horror history like nobody else.
Right. But I will say, and we have talked way too much about Dawn of the Dead in this podcast's history, but Peter Washington, the character he plays, the SWAT team member in Dawn of the Dead, the 1978 George Romero film, is a really, really powerful, and I mean, much like in the same way that Duane Jones was incredibly powerful in Night of the Living Dead. Peter Washington is very, very powerful, and it's still was in 1978. I think shocking to see both an African American as a lead, somebody who was very powerful, somebody who, as Gwen put it, kind of cut through all the malarkey, and really sort of led the film. And he's kind of the ultimate protagonist. Yep. In sort of breaking down the zombie plague, figuring out a way in which to create a humane setting in a shopping mall, and ultimately he survives. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen a now almost 50-year-old film.
Yeah, and now, I'm trying to remember if in the remake, now it's different characters, but does Ving Rhames survive in the end?
I know.
They get to everybody gets wiped out. They go to an island or something like that, and they still get and
right. Now the island piece is during the credits. I mean, well, yeah. I mean, mostly you see the island piece play out in the credits. I don't think anybody survives.
Yeah,
because I think everybody dies at the end on the island.
Much bigger group of survivors in the sequel.
Yeah,
nobody makes it.
And Ving Rhames was also in addition to being in the remake of Dawn of the Dead, he was also in the first remake of Day of the Dead,
and Piranha 3D.
Yeah, boy, why are we not talking about Ving Rhames?
We just did.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Gwen.
All right. This is a little maybe obscure, but I chose an actor named Zakes Moquet in his role as a police detective in Dust Devil from Richard Stanley in 1992. So the story of Dust Devil is you kind of follow a woman who is maybe in an abusive relationship, and she leaves her husband and drives out into the desert. It's set in Namibia, which is like a eerie and beautiful setting for this because there's just sand dunes for every miles and miles in every direction. She comes upon a hitchhiker who we saw basically pick up another woman and kill her in the beginning scene. So she picks him up, and you're kind of like waiting for him to also attack her, and that doesn't happen for a little while. But meanwhile, the police department is trying to find the person who is leaving a trail of bodies behind him. So there's a lot of folklore. Mythology that plays into this. A dust devil is, of course, one of those dust storms that when wind conditions and air pressure and things converge in the desert, it creates a swirling column of wind. They can be quite dangerous because they often herald the beginning of a dust storm as well. But in the folklore of the area, the dust devil is also kind of a demon that can shapeshift into various forms. So the idea is that Robert John Burke, who plays the hitchhiker, is one of these dust devils that is changing form. And maybe he's trapped in this human body. A very artsy film, lots of building of atmosphere, creepiness, dread. And it's interesting because you kind of split time between the woman is played by Chelsea Field, their story, and then the police detective Ben's story. And you kind of get a sense that he has seen some shit. Wait, am I allowed to swear?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He has seen some shit that'll turn you white. Call back to Ghostbusters there. But you kind of get the sense, too, that he is more tied into what this folklore demon is and has a little extra insight into how to maybe fight it. So, of course, the happy ending isn't really in the stars for any of these characters, but in the ending is kind of a transformation. But I just like his character because it's almost a noir detective character that you would see like Humphrey Bogart or James Cagney, like in the classic Maltese Falcon fashion, except that it's an African American in Namibia. And
isn't Zakes he's South African, I believe. Yeah. So,
and he sort of wandered around the horror genre in quite a few other films.
Serpent in the Rainbow, yeah,
and Vampire in Brooklyn with Eddie Murphy, getting back to Ghostbusters, or what might have been Ghostbusters,
right?
Ghostbusters in an alternative timeline.
Yeah, and a movie that I swear I'm going to have to review for the podcast here, but Roar. The most dangerous movie ever made, where it didn't intend to start out that way, but it ended up being a scary movie because living with lions is not a smart idea.
Was he?
Oh, the one with Tippi Hedren and
he was in that one.
Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding.
So according to the IMDb bio, he's in there.
What?
But
what was it like? Was he just friends with Tippi Hedren or something, or was he?
I'm gonna have to look into this a little bit. I'm just this is me looking at IMDb.
He was also in Outbreak and Waterworld.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, he's done a lot of stuff, but he is
the most horrifically expensive film ever made.
Yes,
Waterworld.
Yeah, that is a horror movie for movie producers, right? It's like, oh my god, we're so far over budget. Yeah,
but I just like the insight that we got into his character. That not only is he this sort of maybe jaded police detective, but he has a history and. As so often happens in these noir movies, that he is not free of, emotional psychological baggage.
Yeah, so this is Dust Devil, 1992.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, new to me.
Put it on your list.
Yes.
Yep, adding it to the list.
Another one, Mike.
Richard Stanley did not make a ton of films.
So I think between
he made
Dust Devil and Color Out of Space, he wrote scripts and he made some short films.
Yeah.
But it took him 30 years to
bust out another film, right?
25 years.
Is Color Out of Space still in theaters?
Color Out of Space is in theaters. Still.
They keep extending the run because it's doing really well.
Yeah. All right.
And we don't even Our first run starts this weekend here.
Wow.
Oh,
We didn't
yeah,
even,
there you go.
we're always late to everything, New Orleans.
Now, Mike, did you get a?
I did a review of Color of Space. Yeah, I was so. I liked elements of it. I really liked elements of it.
Had you read the story?
I had. Which I was kind of disappointed that they didn't follow the story. Because the story really follows, it's from the perspective of the surveyor, and in the film he's just kind of bookends the beginning and end of the film, and there again it's an African American gentleman who plays the surveyor in the 2019 Richard Stanley film, and I was kind of hoping when he's first introduced at the beginning of the film that they would sort of follow him through the film, and that but of course when you get Nicolas Cage, you sort of have to follow Nicolas Cage.
I think it sounded like when they were cutting together the film, the things that stood out the most were all the scenes with Madeline Arthur, who plays Lavinia, the daughter.
Right.
And for me, it's really her film. It's really her story.
Right.
And we kind of are given the most insight into her point of view.
Right.
And Ward, the hydrologist, is the witness.
Right.
And I would have liked to see him in a slightly larger role, but I think ultimately the story is served by having her in the forefront.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I agree.
So yeah, and I think
you can see the review
but
at Scariest Things.
I'm very biased about this film because I had heard that it was kind of not in the works, but I knew there was a script for it way back in 2013, and then in 2015, when we had Richard Stanley out here to be a special guest at the Hollywood Theater, we showed The Other World in conjunction with Lost Soul, which was already playing at the theater, which is the documentary about the island of Dr. Moreau. And Richard shared with us at that time that he was just in beginning talks with Spectre Vision about possibly making this film. So we've been kind of along for the ride the whole way.
Yep.
And he's uncredited in Island of Dr. Moreau. Isn't that right?
Yeah, he snuck back on the set and got makeup as a dog or wolf person that was in the movie.
Nice. All right, so do we got time for some grave digging?
I don't have any grave digging, but if you do, Eric, which it sounds like you do, that was a very leading question.
Yeah.
The
Sort of playing along some of the famed African American actors, and particularly some of our favorite Grindhouse actors. I just finished watching the Fangoria production of VFW with Fred Williamson, who is 82 years old.
Yep.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was born
the Hammer.
Yeah. And I think it was born in 1939.
Yeah. Okay.
It is. Now, so this is produced by our friend Amanda Presmick, through Fangoria. It throwbacks to John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13.
For sure.
It feels like, Magnificent Seven. It is a straight up siege movie. It's really straightforward. But you got
how is Fred Williamson?
He gets to put on he puts nails between his hands and he starts punching drugged out guys. Now, unfortunately, I don't think he doesn't get as good of a run as Stephen Lang and Bill Sadler, who, I mean, this really is a bunch of classic genre actors who always get their secondary supporting role jobs, getting to do lots of exposition and a lot of fighting. Old guys in their late 60s through 80s, playing Vietnam vets who get the VFW is under siege by zombies, or not zombies. They're like zombies. They're drugged out maniacs, and
So
it's
Floridians.
Yeah.
sorry, Florida.
I think this is. I'm not sure where it actually takes place. It's they don't name the city, but it sure could have been Tampa for all I know.
Yeah.
But I think the supporting villains are a lot of fun and kind of intimidating, but the lead villain is a little too frail looking to be intimidating at all. It's like, you can put on a spiked leather coat if you want to, but you're not scaring anybody.
And VFW, we anticipate will be coming out later this year.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, in February, I think Valentine's Day. I think it's coming out on the 14th.
Oh, so like weeks away.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, I've got the review. I just posted it last night. I know Liz has seen it. I know that Wayne really liked this movie.
He did.
All right.
It's a movie for dudes, let me tell you. I mean, I had a great time watching it. It is about as subtle as like getting hit in the face with a brick. Oh, yeah. But it's a good time. It is a good time. Wayne looked at me and he was like, I love this movie. But, it's awesome to see that age group of characters and actors on screen being able to kick some ass. It's fun. It's good fun.
Yeah.
All right.
And because Wayne's he's a vet, right?
He is, but not
non-vet.
He was medically discharged after a accident at one of their training things. Yep.
Okay.
He can't hear out of one ear. Someone shot a rifle off right next to his head. So, but he is a poster boy for the Army. You guys have seen
literally
it.
the poster boy.
Literally the poster boy for the Army.
It's the chin.
Yep.
Yep.
So read Eric's review of VFW. Read my review of Color Out of Space. Listen to Gwen's new podcast, Gretchen and Gwen, or Gwen and Gretchen?
Gwen and Gretchen watch movies.
Gwen and Gretchen watch movies. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram. Where's it going to be available for download?
Probably Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts. All right.
Right.
Check Stitcher. Check Apple Podcasts. Check Blueberry. Check Google Play. Is Google Play a thing anymore?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think
Check TikTok, Snapchat. Right. I don't know.
And when you're on that, while you're doing that, hit like and subscribe on our podcast, because we can
for sure.
We're continually growing, but we can use all the support we can get.
Hallelujah!
All right.
Hallelujah.
Be sure to go back and listen to all the back episodes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen to all the back episodes and go celebrate Black History Month.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
So do we have who's got the tagline call out here?
I don't have a tagline, but how about I give a fun fact about a classic African American character that we didn't talk about because we were trying to dig deep for you. And it's a fun fact about the movie Candyman. So Tony Todd plays the first supernatural villain that was African American, and everybody knows Candyman has tons and tons of honeybees that come out of his mouth. There were over 200,000 real honeybees used in the movie.
What?
And Tony Todd negotiated a bonus of $1,000 for every bee sting he got, and he was stung 23 times. So
wow,
smart man.
Most expensive bee stings in the history of film, I guess. Huh?
Totally worth it.
Yeah, I don't know if it would be for me, but the fun fact about a seminal movie that we touched on a little bit in Women in Horror because it's being remade, but is a classic of the genre.
Check back in June 2020.
Thanks. Happy Black History Month, everybody.